Testing. officially open this evening's special council meeting at 7 p.m. Tonight's meeting has been called for to consider the 2023-24 budget and for consideration of the draft corporate business plan for 2023-24 to 2026-27. Thank you for your attendance tonight. I'd like to remind everyone in the chambers to ensure that comments are respectful to the council and all meeting attendees, including council staff and those in our public gallery. Please note that this meeting is being live streamed. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we are meeting, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and pay my respects to elders, past, present and emerging. Item 3, announcements. There are nil. Item 4, attendance. Councillor Easton and Councillor Clark are attending tonight's meeting by electronic means. All other councillors are present in the chamber this evening. Item 5, disclosures of interest. Thank you to Mr. Luke Bodica, Director of Works and Infrastructure, who has disclosed a proximity interest in relation to the resurfacing of Falkirk Road, which is listed in the Capital Works program in item 9.1, as he owns property on Falkirk Road. The details of this interest are listed in your agenda. Are there any councillors who have an interest to disclose? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I'm declaring a financial proximity interest in both item 9.1, Budget 2023-24, and item 9.2, Corporate Business Plan 2023-24 to 2026-27, as they commit the City to a provision of a service and funding related to the Maylands Underground Power Project. My husband owns property within the area of Maylands that will be receiving underground power. I believe that this is an interest in common with a significant number of ratepayers, as there are over 3,400 properties in Maylands that will be receiving underground power, and it's also likely that the service will be provided to other properties in the City of Bayswater in the future. I would like to remain in the chamber and participate on the debate and vote for these items, and I'll seek Council's approval to do so under section 5.68 of the Local Government Act.
Thank you. We'll go to councillors after I get all the disclosures. Councillor Peterson-Pick.
Thank you. I have a proximity interest in item 9.1 and 9.2 with regards to the Maylands Underground Power Project, as I own property in the catchment area. And I will leave the room in the relevant sections.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you. I have a number of impartiality interests due to membership. I'm a member of Bayswater Bowls and Recreation Club, which is mentioned in the report. A member of Ellis House, which is Arts Centre, which is based at Ellis House, which is mentioned in the report. Also a member of Bayswater Historical Society and Environment House, which are not specifically mentioned in the report, but are based in facilities operated by the City of Bayswater.
So can I just confirm, is that 9.1 or 9.2 or both? Sorry, Councillor Maleka, if you can turn off your mic.
Thank you. My apologies. That's 9.1. It's impartiality interest, and I'll stay in the room.
Thank you. Councillor Maleka.
Thank you. Yes, I have impartiality interests as well. Again, for Ellis House, it's mentioned in the Capital Works in the budget, and I am a member. And also Sherbrooke Heights is mentioned as being a road that's being resurfaced, and that's the home of where my mother lives. Thank you.
So that's item 9.1 as well.
Thank you.
Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mayor. I've got a number of interests to declare. I'll start with some impartial interests. They're definitely in relation to 9.1, but I must confess I haven't then cross-referenced 9.2, so I'm going to cover for both 9.1 and 9.2, as obviously the corporate business plan may mention some of these, or at least touch upon what we're doing here. I looked at it in the whole. So the Bayswater Bowls Club, I'm a member there. It's mentioned, obviously funded in the budget. My husband's grandparents live in one of the city's aged care facilities. I'm also a member of the Bayswater Toy Library, which I think is listed in the papers as the Embleton Toy Library, but I believe it would probably be the Bayswater Toy Library. And so I'll remain in the room in relation to those 3 impartial interests. Following advice from the CEO and also external legal advice, I'm declaring a financial interest in the Maylands Underground Power item, mainly because of how it interacts with Western Power and my employment with the Economic Regulation Authority. Slightly unusually, though, I'm actually going to rely on exemptions under sections 5.631B of the Local Government Act, which relates to an imposition of a service charge, and also section 5.631G, which relates to employee of a body established under written law, and remain in the chamber and participate in the debate and vote on this item. So in relying on that advice and these exceptions, I'll do that this time.
Thank you. Any other councillors have declaration? Councillor Ball.
For item 9.1, budget 2023-24, I am a member of the Bedford Bowling Club. It's an impartial interest and I'll stay in the room. Again, item 9.1, budget 2023-24, I'm a member of the Bayswater Bowling and Recreation Club. It's an impartial interest and I'll stay in the room. And again, item 9.1, budget 2023-24, I'm a member of the Bayswater Historical Society who leases Halliday House. It's an impartial interest and I'll stay in the room.
Thank you. Councillor Ostrzowski.
Thank you. My first one is for item 9.1 for the budget 23-24. Farley Way is mentioned in the Capital Works program, and my mum lives on Farley Way, and this road resurfacing is being funded through a grant. This is an impartial interest and I'll stay in the room.
Thank you. Councillor Sutherland.
I'd like to declare a proximity interest and I'll leave the room for 9.1, budget 23-24, the footpath renewal project. Bunya Street's included there and I live on that street.
And that's proximity. Yep. Councillor Peterson-Pick.
Yes, sorry, I remembered another interest that I have. This is an impartial one with both regards to both item 9.1 and 9.2. This is an impartial interest as both of those items refer to the Safe Routes to School plan, and my kids attend the school and I'm also on the board of that school. So it's an impartial. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ostrzowski.
Thank you. And just my second one was for the 9.2, the Corporate Business Plan 23-24 through 26-27. It's regarding the Targeted Underground Power Program. It's an impartial interest and I'll be staying in the room.
Thank you. Councillor Sutherland, can I just check, sorry, going back to your proximity interest, just to clarify, you said item 9.1 and 9.2? Yep, thank you.
9.1 and 9.2, that's what I've written here anyway.
Thank you. I'll declare an impartial interest in both 9.1 and 9.2, Safe Routes to School. The school my child attends is mentioned in that. It's an impartial interest and I'll be staying in the room. Okay, so councillors, as the Deputy Mayor has requested to participate in the debate and vote in the budget and corporate business plan in relation to Maylands Underground Power, I will need to ask the Deputy Mayor and Councillor Peterson-Pick to withdraw from the chambers while the council... No, Lorna's staying. While the council considers this matter. Councillors, the wording, I'll just wait for them to leave. The wording for this motion will be put onto the screen. And I'll just give councillors a moment to read the wording and then I'll ask for a mover and a seconder.
Sorry, Mayor, are you able to read that out?
Yeah, sure. I'll read it out. That Council 1 resolves under section 5.68 of the Local Government Act 1995 that the financial proximity interest declared by Councillor Earhart, Deputy Mayor, in the Maylands Underground Power Project as identified in item 9.1, budget 23-24, and item 9.2, corporate business plan 2023-24 to 2026-27 is considered an interest held in common with a significant number of ratepayers. And 2, permits Councillor Catherine Earhart, Deputy Mayor, to remain within the council chambers to debate and vote on these items, including any motion relating to the Maylands Underground Power Project. Do I have a mover and seconder? Move Councillor Palmer, seconded Councillor Sutherland. Councillor Palmer, do you wish to talk? Councillor Sutherland, do you wish to talk? Anyone wish to talk on this? Councillor Bull?
Just a couple of questions, if I may. Firstly, my first question is, how are we able to resolve something like this in the agenda? How is this able to just slot in the agenda?
I'll go to the Manager of Governance.
Through the chair, so there's provision in the Local Government Act for a council or a committee to allow councillors that have declared financial or proximity interests to be able to participate in a vote if their interest is held in common with other ratepayers, or if it's considered to be trivial. So in this case, Councillor Earhart has asked for the council to consider allowing her to participate in the item because she considers the item to be the interest to be in common with a significant number of ratepayers. So that's what she's asking the council to determine. There are 2 different places in the agenda that could be considered. It could be considered at the beginning of each item. Given that Councillor Earhart has declared the same interest in items 9.1 and 9.2, it just seemed to be an appropriate place in the agenda where the councillors are declaring interests for the council to determine at that point whether or not you wanted the councillor to be able to remain in the chamber and participate in those items.
And given that I don't really have any information other than what's been said, is there a report that goes along with this, or do we get information about what we're voting on and how it can amount to an interest in common? Because there's really very minimal info that's been provided.
I'll go to the Manager to comment.
Through you, Madam Mayor. So under the Act, what has to occur is the councillor needs to describe the extent of their interest to the council. So Councillor Earhart has explained that her husband owns a property in Maylands and that's one property of 3,400 other properties in Maylands that are affected. So she has described the extent of her interest, and then the council needs to decide the extent to which it will allow Councillor Earhart to participate. So, for example, you could say that Councillor Earhart is allowed to participate but not vote, or participate and vote. There was also some legal advice provided to the council around this provision in the Act earlier in the month in relation to this matter.
And one more question. How many properties are in the City of Bayswater?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I believe there are around 3,500 rateable properties. The Acting Director of Corporate may wish to correct me on that. So it's around 10%.
35,000?
Yes.
Cool.
Sorry, yes, 35,000.
Cool. I'd like to speak, please. I am not going to support this with the information that I've been provided, which I really appreciate. I understand why we can do it here, so thank you. However, 3,400 properties doesn't seem like a significant number of ratepayers in the context of the entire district. I think it would need to be a lot more, frankly. In the order of tens of percent more. And so on that basis, I just don't think this is, and I think it's actually prudent to ensure that the councillor doesn't inadvertently act in a situation where they may well in fact have a proximity or financial interest that doesn't amount to an interest in common. So I'm not going to support it on that basis.
Thank you. Would anyone like to speak on this? If not, I'll go the mover to close. Councillor Palmer. Okay, I will put this to the vote. All those in favour? That's Councillor Maleka, Councillor Osazowski, Councillor Palmer, Councillor Sutherland, Councillor Eason, Councillor Clark and myself. All those against? Councillor Bull and Councillor Johnson. That is carried. So can we please ask both the Deputy Mayor and Councillor Peterson Peak back into the room? So councillors, just to let you know, the motion to allow the Deputy Mayor to participate in the Maylands Underground Power discussion has been adopted, approved. I'll now move on to item 6, which is public question time. Members of the gallery, as mentioned in tonight's agenda, public questions at a special council meeting must relate to items on the agenda. So if you'd like to come forward, please provide your name and suburb before you ask your question, and please keep in mind that you are limited to 3 questions. Would anyone like to come forward? No? No? Okay. Councillors, the city has received questions in writing from Mr. Warren Lance of Maylands. These questions and the responses from officers have been listed in your run sheet, and I'll take those as read. Move on to item 7, presentations. Petitions. Councillors, does anyone have a petition to table in relation to the items on tonight's agenda? No? Presentations, there are none at tonight's meeting, and we don't have any deputations for this evening's meeting. Move on to item 8, method of dealing with agenda business. As we only have 2 items on the agenda tonight, and we'll need to consider both as they require an absolute majority. So we'll now move on to consideration of item 9.1, the budget for the 2023-24 financial year. So on this item, it is going to be a bit complex given the advice that we've received. And so to allow for councillors to participate in debate and voting on the parts of the budget in which they have not declared an interest, when we come to vote, I will be separating the motion so that councillors may vote on individual limbs where appropriate. However, I'll be moving it as a whole. I'd like to note that an addendum to this item was issued on Friday, the 16th of June, 2023. And the motion I'll be moving tonight, as shown in your run sheet, incorporates the amendments made by the addendum. So I will be moving the officer's recommendation with the amendments as shown in red on your run sheet. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Maleka. Okay. So I'll begin. Councillors, the budget we're presenting here tonight is a responsible budget that protects the services our community value while keeping rates as low as possible. Before I share some of the highlights from this year's budget, I'd like to take a moment to reflect on how far we've come. Last year, we were fortunate enough to attract our new CEO, Jeremy Edwards. Jeremy has a wealth of experience gained over his 30 years in metropolitan and regional councils. Through the introduction of council-led business planning, Jeremy has redefined how we approach the budgeting process. The early workshops with councillors held late last year enabled us to set clear priorities on behalf of our community. He then led the administration in mapping out and costing all of the services the city delivers. This process of service planning gave councillors the confidence to make decisions, and we will continue to build on this process, and I look forward to future years of business planning and a greater understanding of our costs. We now have an effective partnership between council and the administration, and over the 3 workshops and 4 briefings held to date, councillors have been given full oversight of the 2023-24 budget. The endorsement of a long-term financial plan alongside the budget this year will ensure the city is financially sustainable now and into the future. This plan will be strengthened as improved asset data becomes available. This budget is the first of many on our journey to financial sustainability. This is a responsible budget that protects the services the community value while keeping rates low. This year, we have reduced the rate in the dollar by 8%, resulting in a revenue yield increase of only 4.95%. This is less than the Perth CPI of 5.8%. Just like our ratepayers, we are faced with an increase in the cost of building materials, petrol and utilities, and these significantly impact our operations. But through restraint and diligence, we are presenting a budget which funds the services and facilities our community value. It staffs and maintains the pool and fitness club at Bayswater Waves, provides the public access to basketball and netball courts at the Rise, keeps the water features running during summer at the newly redeveloped Maylands Waterland, and gives our young people access to WA's biggest half pipe at the new City of Bayswater Skate Park. It also funds the operation of 3 libraries and 2 community centres and maintains 2 public golf courses. This year's budget allocates $450,000 towards the installation of new playgrounds in a number of city reserves in line with our place-based strategy. It locks in the support we offer our 150 local community and sporting clubs by providing club rooms and facilities. This year, the City will contribute $200,000 towards the installation of additional change rooms at Upper Hillcrest Reserve and contribute funds towards the upgrading of floodlights at Halliday Park at a total cost of $350,000. This budget allocates $800,000 towards a range of popular community events that contribute to the vibrancy of our city. This year, the City's Community Art Awards and exhibition will expand into an arts festival that includes community-led events, markets and tours celebrating local creators and artists. This budget provides over $171,000 in grant funding to businesses and environmental, sporting and community groups. This includes community capital grants that provide accessibility upgrades to community facilities, Better Bayswater grants that make our city a better place to live, community events grants that bring people together, placemaking grants that improve shop fronts and enhance our town centres, and donations to charitable organisations. It is all a part of our vision for a strong and inclusive community. As part of our broader advocacy program, our CEO Jeremy Edwards and I are working together to raise the profile of the City of Bayswater. This will help us attract vital grant funding from the state and federal government to upgrade our community facilities, protect our natural environment, and ensure all members of our community have the opportunity to participate in community life. For Bayswater to realise its true potential, we must also be strategic in our advocacy efforts and deliver on our commitment to economic development. We are petitioning the government for vital infrastructure such as sewerage upgrades that would attract more businesses to the Bayswater industrial area and unlock the city's potential. Given the significant investment by the state government and new stations under construction at Bayswater, Morley and Noranda, we must raise awareness that the city is ready for investment. There will be a commitment towards the continued rollout of the city's interim economic development strategy in this budget that will see a renewed focus on attracting new development and the continued support for local businesses. As part of our commitment to economic development, the city will progress with the purchase of the Les Hansman site in Morley. The redevelopment of this key site will pave the way for the reactivation of the Morley Town Centre. With respect to the environment, we will continue to reinvest savings made through the implementation of our emission reduction and renewable energy plan as we work towards net zero emissions in our operations. This year, the city has reinvested $100,000 in savings generated through the installation of solar panels and the purchase of green energy via a power purchasing agreement facilitated by WALGA. $240,000 will also be spent on riverbank restoration as we work to mitigate the effects of climate change. The city is one step closer to realising its goal of creating an urban forest at Riverside Gardens, after securing $1.2 million over the next 2 years from the state and federal government. The city has partnered with environmental experts Greening Australia to help design and deliver this project. This partnership will enable us to leverage funding from the private sector. This approach of public-private partnerships is something we should be utilising for future projects. This budget will also see 5,000 trees planted in streets and parks in an effort to grow our urban canopy, reduce the heat island effect and create walkable neighbourhoods. This is our largest winter planting program yet. This year's budget contains $1.1 million towards the construction of stage 1 of a new cycle path connecting Bayswater train station and the Morley Activity Centre. The cycle path will provide commuters with a safe, direct route into the city via train, ensure local children can ride to school safely, and enable residents to directly access shops and restaurants in the Morley Town Centre. The budget will also facilitate the delivery of underground power with residents and businesses in a portion of Maylands set to benefit as ageing infrastructure is replaced by Western Power. I am confident this year's budget, alongside our long-term financial plan, reinforces Council's commitment to protecting the services our community value. I'd like to thank my fellow councillors, the staff and leadership team at the City for all their hard work. Thank you. I'll now go to the seconder.
Thank you. Thank you. I'd also like to commence by acknowledging and thanking the City Directors and the officers for all of the hard work that you've put into preparing the material in all of the budget workshops that have led us to tonight, and the guidance from the CEO. Thank you. It's been a real pleasure actually to read these documents and to actually see a sequential development each time we went through the budget process. So the budget we have here tonight, without having to reiterate what the Mayor has clearly articulated, is a budget that has taken into consideration the cost of living pressures. And these cost of living pressures don't just affect the people in our community, it has affected us and our core services. And so we have taken that into consideration. But what I see as promising in this budget is that we have maintained the core services that we believe are important to the people in our community. And just to highlight that what I notice in the capital budget is that the bulk of that budget has actually been for the renewal process. So we are actually making sure that we are maintaining what we already have. We also see in this budget tonight that we are leading towards financial sustainability in the years to come, and that it is a true reflection of the guiding principles of doing it right, doing it well, doing it better, and doing it together. And this is something that we should be proud of, and it's what we can see coming through in our corporate business plan as a guiding document for us as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ossowski.
I'd like to move an amendment, please.
Yes.
Thank you.
And that's been provided to all councillors.
The city's, yes, has provided it to all councillors, yes.
I'll just ask for the amendment to be put on the screen. Just check with the minute taker, is the amendment getting put on the screen? Councillor Osazowski, would you like to read out any portion of your
I
amendment?
can't quite read from here, and I don't have it on my screen, thank you. Yes,
It's in
thank
the
you.
run sheet.
Thank you. In regards to Lim 1, the general and minimum rates, service charges, instalment payments, etc., for the purpose of yielding the deficiency disclosed by the budget, etc., imposes a uniform general rate of 6.740 cents in the dollar. Have to read out the rest of it? Yeah. Oh, there it is. At part 1, reduces the rates income budget by $2.965133 million, with the offsetting adjustment being a reduction in the following budget expenditure items, and there is a list provided for everyone to see. And part 2 approves officers to update the statutory budget as detailed in Lim 1 with this budget adjustment. And the reason for offering this to Council for their consideration tonight is to try and provide for additional savings in the budget so that the impost on ratepayers can be reduced further.
Thank you. I will just check with the seconder about, I don't support the amendment. I'll just check with the seconder. Do you support the amendment? Oh, okay, it doesn't. Okay, so seeing as that's not forming part, I'll see if there's a seconder for your amendment. Is there a Councillor Sutherland? So Councillor Osazowski, you can now debate your amendment.
Speak to the amendment. Thank you. Councillors, I wanted to offer to everyone tonight the consideration of a rate in the dollar at 0.6740. And the purpose for doing this is so that when people's rates notices come to them, what they see on their rates notice is more aligned with the general expectation of the type of increases that people may expect to see, considering what they're seeing across the community. I want our ratepayers, our residential ratepayers in particular, to have a rates notice that is in alignment with what they are hearing and seeing and experiencing in regards to the costs that are increasing. I am also concerned by cost of living pressures across the board. And it is ever increasingly, and even for many people, impossible to balance budgets. So in my mind, every dollar that we can save here for our ratepayers is a dollar in their pocket to help them. And I think that's worth considering. I think the budget can go a little bit further to help address cost of living pressures for our ratepayers. We are the closest level of government to our ratepayers, and I believe we should also be looking at our budget in the same way that our ratepayers would look at their budget in their household. There's some things that we have to spend on. There's some things we have to upgrade. There's some things that we might have to pare back on. These are the things we do in our house, and I think we should be looking at our budget in the same way. I believe there's ability to pare back our budget, reduce our budget by just under $3 million this coming year. If we're to achieve a 0.6740 rate in the dollar, to give a 0% rate yield, that's what I'm hoping to achieve through this, is a 0% rate yield. I think that'd be very, very beneficial for our ratepayers. A couple of years ago, we had a COVID budget where we had a 0% rate yield, and at that time in that budget, I argued that it was not the right time to be doing that. However, I also said that I think in a few years' time we would definitely need to have a 0% rate yield, and that is this year, I believe. Regrettably, though, this means we do need to consider how we're funding our operations and our capital projects, just like we would in our home. When we look at our strategic pillars, we can see that 50% of our budget is spent on environment, and we can see that around 24% is spent on community, 24% on vibrancy, and the remaining on governance. By reviewing and adjusting our levels of service within the service areas in those strategic pillars, we can still feel very comfortable that we can proceed with our environmental initiatives and our community initiatives and our other initiatives that are cognizant, mindful and respectful of the pressures that are facing our budget. I have confidence that ratepayers would understand the need and would agree that we can continue our great work across all of these pillars with some well-considered reductions. The list that we have in front of us here, I understand it's quite an interesting list to look at, and it is quite surprising, disappointing, shocking in some ways. But it is a list that the city has helped to prepare to identify areas where we could reduce for the following year. The city has helped us to understand where we could move things to a future year. I'm just trying to find ways for us to save some money for our ratepayers. Changing the rate in the dollar to 6740 will provide our residential ratepayers a 13% tax break on their last year's rates notice. Changing their rate in the dollar will give our residential ratepayers, who make up 93% of our population, the break they need right now. It will also provide the signal to our commercial and industrial landowners that we are open for investment. This supports and encourages the creation of jobs, growth, and diversity in our local economy. We need growth and we need investment in the city of Bayswater. I implore councillors to please consider my amendment seriously. I am absolutely certain that this change to the rate in the dollar is the right thing to do for the ratepayers and for the city of Bayswater.
Thank you. Councillor Sutherland.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to also endorse this amendment if we could. Before I do that, I'd like to echo some of the thank yous regarding the budget, the prepping of the budget over time. I'd like to give a big thank you to the officers and the CEO for all the work you've put into this budget, and our dedicated team, led by the CEO, has worked tirelessly to analyse the needs of our city, assess available resources, and worked hard to develop a budget that aligns somewhat to councillors' aspirations. Just for the people that might be watching this, we've attended 6 workshops since November last year. Okay.
Sorry, just Councillor Sutherland.
Thank you. I believe we're just discussing the amendment.
So the point of order is relevant.
I don't think that's relevant, talking about the whole budget as a preparation. We're supposed to be talking about the amendment.
The amendment. Councillor Sutherland, if you could please keep your comments to the
All
amendment.
right, well, I was just saying thanks to you guys, so thanks, all right? All right, well, I want to support...
Sorry, Mayor, we can't quite hear what's happening. Can we?
Because the microphone died. Councillor Sutherland's microphone died, so we're getting a new one.
My microphone died, so I'm starting again. Okay, I'm sorry. And I'll make this relevant. This one won't die. The cost of living, and the reason I'm doing this is purely because of an economic reason and the cost of living. It's having a huge impact, not just in the city of Bayswater, but all over the state, on our community. Costs of food, fuel, insurance, rent, utilities, all going through the roof. And this also is happening in the council, and while the council's having these issues with rising costs to deliver services, I don't think it's fair to burden the ratepayer with the extra cost, because ratepayer makes up for most of our revenue. Also keeping in mind this year that we've had the GRVs valued as well. Before I go on to any more other things, that's the main reason I'd like to support this. I'd also like to make mention that it would be great if the state government could step up with more of the environmental issues. If I read some of this list, we've got some of the environmental works and work in infrastructure. For example, trees. We have had a lot of work done with MetroNet, which I 100% endorse and appreciate, and I'm thankful for the transformation this is having on Baysy, and also thankful for the skate park. But it would be great with all the trees that have come out through the transformation if the state government gave us more money to put the trees back in, the ones that we've lost, because we just don't have the money at the moment to do this. I also just want to make the point that I don't know why we have to go through this local government reform when we do have such a big cost of living crisis in the state. And other government charges which haven't helped the budget. I also am mindful of burdening businesses in the city with extra costs. We have a duty to encourage businesses in the city, especially in the town centres. And I feel that we could pare back for the time being in these tough economic times. It's really important to strike a balance between prudent financial management, investing in core business to enhance the overall livability of the city. Sometimes I do think it's not just us, but all councils around Australia, that there's sort of a blurred line between state and council functions. The state's expecting us to bring on, do more, and it would be great if sometimes we just say, no, we can't, it's up to you to give us some more money. Anyway, I think in these economic times we do have to be mindful of our residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Clark, did you wish to speak?
Mayor, I had a question, but I found the right cross-reference number. I'd wish to speak against, if possible, but
Yep,
happy.
go ahead. This is on the amendment, though.
Yes, no, I'm
Yeah.
happy to speak to the amendment and,
Yeah.
remain relevant to that. I received this list at 6:10 this evening. I find it really disappointing. We have been in budget workshops since November last year. We have sat through hour after hour after hour together. And to receive this list now is a bit of a slap in the face, quite frankly. Not only do I not have an opportunity as a councillor to receive any advice on this from the city, from the Director of Finance, from the CEO, I don't have any oversight of how this affects the budget. This is economically reckless. This will destroy economic development in the city of Bayswater. Look, perhaps it's a dead cat strategy. You throw the dead cat on the table, and then everyone's grateful for the crumbs once we've seen what's left over after this. Perhaps that's what's going on here. Happy to call that out if it is. But let's just go through the list of cuts here. Councillor Eveson's looking very surprised on my screen. I don't think you should be, though. This is what I've come to expect coming into this chamber, to be totally honest. So we'll go through the cuts. So we're cutting the external change rooms to Crimea Park. We're cutting toilet facilities at Horton Park Pavilion. We're not replacing a roof at the Morley Community Centre, so let's hope that it's not leaking. We're not replacing workstation replacements for information services, so let's hope that doesn't relate to work health and safety or OH&S at the City of Bayswater. We're not doing major path repairs to the tune of $40,000. $35,000 is getting cut from drainage grates renewal. Now, all this sounds very anodyne, right? But the difficulty I have is that after 6 years on council, when we go through these budgets, we go through them line by line. And when you read and you actually ask the city, what is that anodyne item, that thing that sounds a little bit boring, you get someone who very excitedly explains to you why it's important at the city and why it's important to local jobs and why it's important that we do this for the local community and what the impact would be if we were to cut it, right? And these are just cuts. Right, let's call it as what it is. It's just cutting it. I mean, so kudos to Councillor Ostaszewski for at least putting his money where his mouth is on the cuts. I just wish that he'd done it in November. We're also cutting the cricket batting cages. So if anyone wanted to play cricket this summer, you're not getting any new play cages there. Play space redevelopments, $450,000 out of our local playgrounds. If you have a child or you're having a child, don't expect to use a playground because they won't be fixed up to the tune of almost $500,000. Sports goal replacements, sport reserve fencing replacements, so the fences will fall down. Maylands Lakes, very surprising given how much time and effort we've put into Maylands Lakes. City lighting renewal. So the same people that talk about economic renewal and revitalising spaces and making sure these spaces are activated, well, there won't be any lighting, so there'll be more crime. But don't worry, I'm sure someone's on getting more ranges and more crime fixes by the end of the year. The town centre's city-led place activation to $60,000 is being cut. The bit that really hurts, though, is the $720,000 that is being proposed to be cut from the tree planting program. So whilst we have climate change at our door, heat island effect, people can barely walk down the footpaths as it is from last summer, we're going to cut almost $750,000 from trees. Not to mention all then the street tree maintenance programs, which actually then keeps the footpaths safe and stops trees falling on people's heads. The residential verge maintenance, median island maintenance. So basically, footpaths and streetscapes. So people will notice this difference. You will see this in your community. I don't think we can really be called the Garden City anymore, can we?
Thank you. Anyone speaking for? Anyone against? Councillor Palmer.
Thank you. I feel that it's been elaborated on with regard to trees, roads, pathways, maintenance of club rooms and so forth. I can understand we all want to lose $3 million off expenses, but we can't do it this way. We can do it on entertainment. Let's get rid of all the small little events that we hold everywhere and things like that, instead of ruining our city by, excuse me? No, that's another subject. That's for the budget. Just looking at this list.
Mayor, could you chair the meeting? There aren't side comments because we can't hear what they are, so we can't know what's going on in the chamber.
I'll just carry on if I may.
There's a point of order's been called, so I have to address it. Councillor Palmer, if you can turn off your microphone.
Just point of order, can Councillor Clark please stop interrupting the meeting?
Councillor Clark, please, no further interruptions unless it's a point of order. Councillor Palmer, please continue.
Sorry, excuse me, Mayor, can I just clarify?
Councillor Clark, I'm going to Councillor Palmer now. Councillor Palmer, please continue.
Mayor, I seek leave to make a personal explanation, please, under the standing orders.
Go ahead.
I don't believe I was interrupting the meeting. I'd like to know what's going on in the meeting and I'd like you to chair it properly.
Councillor Palmer, please continue.
Thank you. There are too many anomalies here for a safe, responsible, council-ridden works that we have to be responsible for. I look at the whole thing, and I'm going to keep this for a long time. I don't think it's acceptable at all. Not one of them. The cycleways, the drainage systems, the cricket synthetics. I'm very concerned about the lighting that for the last 4 years we have been trying to make LED and less expensive. All of that is cut. This is a cut and burn list, and I'm sorry I have to go against it. Thank you. And that's me being very brief.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone else wish to speak to the amendment? Councillor Johnson.
Thank you. And thank you, Councillor Ossowski, for bringing this item forward. Always say, don't ask, you don't get. However, I'll speak against it and try and remain relevant while Councillor Clark has outlined the list of items and why they're of such value to our community and the process for cutting them out at this late stage. The first Paxton report talked about sustainable rate increases and the long-term impacts that they have on our budget and, the risks of making political decisions on rates really instead of making them sensibly for the long term and in line with the long-term plan. So just on that basis, I'll be against this one. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Peterson-Pick.
Yes, thank you. Just several comments. Look, we do have obviously diversity of views about many issues, including this issue. There are two councillors that consider that this is an appropriate way for us. So I think it's an opportunity to talk about this. I thank Councillor Ossowski for bringing this because later on, when I will discuss the budget and what I think about the budget, I it will help to show that my position is very moderate and well balanced after we will conclude with this amendment. But this is the other extreme. I don't support two extremes. There is a balanced way in the middle, and that is not the right approach to deal with the issues that we are dealing in the city. Whilst I somewhat support the intention behind it, that is not the way to go about it at all. Not last minute, but definitely not those kind of proposals that we are talking about. 0% rate increase is irresponsible, and I am very financially conservative, and I think it's all known here. I don't know many ratepayers around the city that will support something like that. They probably will not support what we have on the table, we'll discuss it, but not zero rate increase in this climate. This is ruining our infrastructure. Footpath repairs, we have elderly people that complained about cracks in the footpaths, and we'll tell them, sorry, we don't have a budget tomorrow morning to fix it. Is this responsible? Not planting one tree, it's not even a reduction, it's removal of all the budget, one tree. I don't know what's the problem with trees, but not one. Look, I will not continue because I think Councillor Clark explained very nicely the issues with the specific reductions. If there were few, if there were some logical, perhaps, but not what is on the table, I can't support any of this, and definitely not in this block. So I cannot support it, unfortunately.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak on this? If not, I'll go the mover. Oh, sorry, Councillor Ball.
Thanks. No, just very quickly, Councillor Ostaszewski did highlight something that I think is important to be aware of, and that is this council did manage to freeze rates 2 years ago during COVID. That process started with a special council meeting that was called urgently during COVID that included a list of things that the council promised the community it would do in response to COVID, and that included freezing rates. So the organisation was aware of council's strategic direction in that year, and what it resulted in was the freezing of rates. So every person who received their rates bill was not $1 more than the previous year, other than a couple of very particular circumstances. Not a slashing of services, but rather thinking about how to make services delivered in a more sustainable way. And there definitely wasn't a sledgehammer to the budget. There definitely wasn't. And it's a shame that Councillor Ostaszewski didn't support that at the time, and I wish he had, because he would be able to say that he did support a rate freeze at the time. I also wish Councillor Ostaszewski had brought this in November for this year as well, because I would have really actually joined with him to look at ways in which we can deliver a lower rate rise and still deliver the services that our community really appreciates. Maybe next year, fingers crossed.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Eason.
Yeah, look, I think just going on the back of Councillor Bull's statements then, look, hats off to Councillor Ostaszewski. I agree. I think this to me reflects the tight situation that the city is in. When we start to look to cut, facility upgrades and maintenance. So, absolutely agree that Councillor Ostaszewski's heart's in the right place and he's thinking the right things. To me, this is a reflection of there's really just not much more to cut to get this value down. So, I won't be supporting this one, but it's a good reflection. So thanks for bringing it up, Councillor Ostaszewski.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak on this? If not, I'll go the mover to close.
Thanks, everyone. Can I just start by saying it is a really great privilege to sit here tonight and offer something different to council to consider, and I appreciate everyone has different views on what I've offered, and I just like that we can sit around this table and have a chat about it in a forum where we can talk about it openly and honestly and within the provisions of governance, which makes it right. So I like that. I really like that, so thank you. In regards to the timing, yes, it is all quite sudden, and I would argue that back in November we wouldn't have had all of the information already with us to be able to come up with some of these decisions or some of these ideas that I've presented tonight. And most certainly it wasn't until around about April that these things started to come to fruition for me, and more recently in the last week since the budget has been released, where I've really knuckled down on this to come up with something to present to council. Now tonight, each of those people who spoke had an opportunity to propose an amendment to this list so that we could talk about what could go in and what could come out. So there was an opportunity for us to change this list. So for those councillors that did believe in the sentiment and the intention of what I was trying to achieve, there were opportunities for you tonight to use the mechanisms available to us to negotiate this list and to come to a balanced outcome. In regards to cuts and reductions, the text on this list say removed, to be programmed in future years, a future year. That is not a cut, it is just a shifting. It is taking a moment to pause whilst we recalibrate. There's a mid-year budget review which will come up, and at that time the city is able to see what funds are available, and councillors have an opportunity to use the mechanisms available to them to provide notices of motions to get these things rebudgeted, refunded, relisted. So councillors have opportunities to make all of the things good that they have mentioned here tonight in their debate. So councillors, if you believe in the intention of what I'm trying to do, knowing that you have all of the mechanisms available to you to make this list right or to negotiate this list with council and to make a council decision, you can do that. So I hope councillors will, again, seriously consider this motion for what its intention is for. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now be putting the amendment to the vote. All those in favour? That's Councillor Ossowski, Councillor Sutherland. All those against? It's Councillor Maleka, Councillor Palmer, Deputy Mayor, Councillor Peterson-Pitt, Councillor Bull, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Easton, Councillor Clark and myself. That is lost. So we'll now go back to the substantive motion. Councillor Clark, you wish to speak?
Sorry, first, Mayor, am I first in the... Are you opening debate? Sorry.
Yes,
what are you...
I'm opening debate to speak on the substantive motion. You indicated that you wanted to speak on this.
In relation to 9.1?
Yes.
I hadn't intended to go first, but I'm happy to kick off. I sent that to you to assist your chairing now. So I'd like to thank the staff and the CEO for this budget. It's been particularly difficult because there's been a number of staffing changes throughout the process. It's always hard to come in halfway through some of these processes, particularly hard when I think that this council is inherently divided. It is divided based on what local government should be. Should we be a business that essentially just does zero rate rises and just talks the talk when it comes to economic development and businesses and cuts and cuts and cuts and replicates the Thatcher and Reagan years? Or should local government actually be a force for good? Sorry, I see the Mayor shaking her head at me. Is there a problem in the chamber that I'm not aware of?
Please continue, Councillor.
All right, sorry, but given the way. Or is it a force for good about how we actually raise revenue, we raise taxes to spend on community outcomes, to spend on amenity, to spend on the things that we are legislated to do under the Local Government Act. So the problem with this budget is essentially what it doesn't do. So you can list off the rats and mice of what is left after all of this, after this right-wing process. But at the end of the day, we're not really funding the homelessness plan. We're not really funding community groups. We're not supporting them when it comes to their leases, and we're not supporting them when it comes to the environment and the environment that they're protecting. We're certainly not providing a secure workforce post-COVID and retaining really good, high-quality staff, and we need to focus more on that as a council. We're not funding things that have been cut, and Councillor Ossowski acknowledged that, yeah, we can bring forward notices of motion. I'm happy to bring forward a notice of motion every month to try and reinstate what has been cut, what has been destroyed. But some of these things, once gone, can actually never return. Immunisations. I don't see how the city can restart that program. All the staff involved have gone and started other jobs. They've all left, right? So children in our city will not be immunised because of the cuts that this council has done. Local garden awards. Again, how are we the garden city if we don't even have some garden awards? We don't fund the local events that families were taking their kids to. They were free events. And one of the things that I object to in the rates and charges in particular is the way that everything is becoming more and more user pays. So if you are struggling financially and your trip out was actually with your kids to the art show, you're now paying $30 to get into that. And that's not how I think local government should work. So I can't in good faith support this. And what I fear is that there are more cuts to come. So if people look to the idea of, there's a sentence in the papers around service reviews. It's on page 13. So it's foreshadowed. Everyone's forewarned this year, it being an election year. But essentially, it says an outcome of the process of the service reviews will be the review of a number of services across the city to ensure they remain relevant and add value to the residents. Now, let's be clear. That's lovely Orwellian speak, but at the end of the day, that is about cuts, cuts, cuts. And if that's the city you want to live in, well, sure, go for it. That is the local council that you will vote for in October. But I can't support that in good faith. I can't sit here as a councillor and say that that's what I stand for and that's the community I represent. Everyone who is out there, what they are telling me is they want community services. They want things to be networked. They want support for their sporting communities. They want support for the buildings that they rent, and they want it to be easier and cheaper. So at the end of the day, you know, I don't want to say I despair, because, you know, at least we have a long-term financial plan. We almost didn't have that, but at least we have a long-term financial plan that, you know, I've been asking for since 2017. At least we're looking more than a year ahead, and beyond the very short electoral cycles that we have. But other than that, there's not much in this budget that I can recommend.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak on the budget? Councillor Palmer?
Thank you. I'll be brief. I'm sure everybody else wants to talk. And I do thank all the staff. They must all be watching very carefully. They've all got jobs and so forth, and they want to keep them. And I respect all of them, from kitchen right up to CEO, and we've got a great CEO. Before our CEO came, a vendor-led contract for the computer situation was signed, SaaS migration. That was signed before councillors had an opportunity to say yes. It was signed on the 30th of June, and the project was agreed to at our meeting of the 26th of July. That's a $5 million bill that we've been handed to look after. And when we look at our budget, we have to forecast that through the long-term plan and also through this budget. And that's what we've tried to do. I'm sad that I feel we're pushing the bench on the long-term plan too quickly and expecting those payments to be done in the 3 or 4 years that has been entailed on the long-term plan. I feel that a lot of the instigating costs we have could be smoothed. We're going through a battle over time, and looking back to when we had our, not that this is a depression, it's just a silent mood, but in tough times, you smooth out those big costs. You don't cut and slash and burn. You smooth it out like a good business person does. You do it at home with your mortgage. You do it with everything that comes through. You smooth it out. And I don't feel very comfortable with the way that we have a budget here, but then next year it's going to be a very hefty cost that we're incurring through these large $5 million bills. And that's not the only one. We've got Bayswater Waves and so forth. And these things have to be done. They're our responsibility to do. So I don't, say that we shouldn't do it, but all I'm saying is I feel I'm more comfortable had it been smoother and that we didn't have such a big toll on our residents as it is at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak to the budget? Councillor Peterson-Pick.
Thank you. Look, first of all, I would like to thank all the teams in the city which have been involved in the preparation of the budget. We did receive quite a lot of useful information this year to assist us with our deliberations, which I personally appreciate a lot. As always, there are many well-needed allocations in the budget, which I fully support. Nevertheless, I have concerns with some major aspects in the proposed budget. Many of them I queried during the process. The proposed rate increase of almost 5% is concerning, as it means that in the last 2 years, the city has imposed almost 10% in rate increases altogether. The proposed rate increase will compound any increases resulting from the update to ratepayers' properties GRV happening this year. I am not convinced that there is something in the current budget that can justify such an increase, being aware that many of our ratepayers, including businesses, are currently struggling. I would like to point out to those local governments which were successful in keeping their rates lower, like Stirling, 3.25%, and Swan, 3.75%. Moreover, the CPI forecast for the forthcoming financial year is actually 3.25%, and the local government cost index shows a 2.9% rise for next year. So the proposed rate increase is much higher than both of those figures. I am also mindful that many ratepayers in Maylands will be hit with another additional significant charge to pay for the installation of new underground power. This is the time to be frugal but responsible and consider whether each allocation is really necessary and can be justified. I will mention just a few examples which I thought that can be removed, unlike what we discussed before. $40,000 for consultancy work to do a community survey for the strategic community plan, which we just adopted 2 years ago. Unnecessary. $39,000 is still there for a community perception survey. We have so many plans that we consulted on. We already should know by now what our residents want us to focus on in the near future. $27,000 is allocated in the budget for a business survey. I would prefer to use the money to provide real improvements and fully implement our existing plans to achieve a real difference soon in our struggling town centres and avoid spending more money on more consultancy. Tens of thousands of dollars is allocated to renew some of our community plans that we only approved a few years ago and we still haven't fully implemented, like the Youth Action Plan, $15,000, and the Cultural Plan, $10,000. Again, money should be spent on implementing real actions. $40,000 is again allocated to fund the chaplaincy program in schools. Is this money that our local government should really spend now? Whilst the budget shows zero deficit, it is in real terms a deficit budget of $0.6 million. I have concerns about incorporating a vacancy rate of 1.5% into the employee costs, whilst the city continues to recruit for all the vacant positions as it should do. This can lead to overspending, and tomorrow morning we might find ourselves in a deficit. We are asked to approve a new long-term financial plan, which is well overdue. But what is before us is far from what we should have. Unfortunately, I find it quite token, as it can't really guide us much. Besides high-level figures, and unlike our existing plan, there is no detail around the agreed projects to be progressed in each one of the next 10 years. The proposed plan shows significant deficit in the first 4 years. In year 2, it shows a deficit of $2.3 million, Madam Mayor. In year 3, a deficit of $1.2 million. In year 4, a deficit of $345,000. No work was done with councillors to minimize those predicted deficits. The suggestion in the report to deplete our reserves to achieve a zero deficit for each year goes against good financial planning. We don't know which reserves will be used, as no discussion occurred yet. Our assets will not have sufficient reserves ready for their maintenance and or replacement in the future. I know that it will be much easier for the council to make those type of decisions after the election, but that's not good financial planning. I've also become aware that $463,000 is left from a previous allocation for the Maylands Lakes restoration project, but is now being removed instead of being kept for another year. This does not seem to be a technical duplicative error, but a decision to reduce the funding that was previously allocated. We now have reports showing us the condition of the main buildings of the Maylands Brickworks which require urgent repair to ensure that they do not collapse in the next 10 years. It is unreasonable not to allocate any funds to protect this heritage site. This will lead to a demolition by neglect situation. Despite the increase in the proposed tree planting, which I fully support, I've received information that indicated that this budget will not ensure that we can meet our agreed canopy target of 16% by 2025 if we take into account the ongoing reductions of trees on private properties and state government land. Finally, this is the second year that not even minimal community consultation has been undertaken with regards to the budget before it was finalized. So in light of those concerns and others, unfortunately, I am not comfortable to support most aspects in the papers before us in their current form.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak on this? Councillor Sutherland?
Yeah, I will. And I will just quickly finish off what I was going to say before about thanking the officers, if that's okay, for all the work they've done over the last 6-7 months or so. It's been really good. And it's also been good. I've been very impressed with the detail that's gone into this, and I really feel like I've come in tonight knowing exactly what's happening. I'd also just like to say I've been listening around with interest with all the comments. I don't think, I was listening to Councillor Clark's comments with interest. I do think life will continue quite well without some of these costs added to the budget. The Paxton report did mention the need for to be responsible, and I look at some of these items and I think they're not in the remiss of local government. I look up the definition of local government. They are not charities. We've got a job to do, and that job is being delegated to by the state government. That's to look after the rubbish, roads, keeping parks, sporting facilities, streetscapes, etc. Done. And the city, in my mind, does that well. We've never, no local government should be providing immunisation in the 21st century when schools do it, and there's so many other places it can be done. And the other one, I was going to say, gyms, we could get rid of that easily. And homelessness is also just not in our scope. We're just too small to do these things. As much as I'd like to, we don't have the money. I don't think we can compare to Stirling and Swan. Stirling's the biggest council in WA. In fact, I think the 11th biggest council in Australia, over 250,000 people. There's no way that we have the economies of scale that Stirling does. So I don't even want to go there. So if we don't have rate rises, but we still want everything free, we want to give our, free rent to, or minimal rent to sports groups, after a while it doesn't work. We have to have the money to keep these buildings up, etc., etc. The City of Bayswater's old council, we've got a lot of old buildings, and we have to maintain the program, and everybody has to pay a bit. We're not living in a utopia where we can give money away. It's one of the reasons why the Western world, I'll go global now, has got such a big inflation problem, because governments are spending too much money all over, from the federal down to the local.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak on this? Councillor Johnson?
So I just want to ask a question first about how we're going to manage this. Are we voting on all of the items, each numbered item separately, or?
Yeah, we're voting on each limb separately.
Okay, thank you. So, but we're speaking on it overall in general? Okay.
Yes. It's moved as a whole, but will be voted on separately.
Thank you. I haven't quite got my head around that yet. My apologies. I wonder if I could move an amendment on the long-term financial plan. What's the way to do that? Yeah. Yeah, just so aware that. Thanks.
Councillor Johnson, have you provided that in writing?
No, I haven't.
Do you have it in writing?
Handwriting?
Is it so? It's in relation to LIM 10.
Yes, that's correct.
Can you read it out and then provide the wording to the minute taker?
Thank you very much for that. My apologies. I wasn't quite sure how we're going to handle this, so I'll get better at it.
Sorry, I'm just clarifying with the manager of governance. It's LIM 12.
Thank you.
So an amendment to LIM 12.
Thank you. Or an alternative, perhaps. So it would be to note rather than endorse the long-term financial plan as contained in attachment 2 for the period 2023-24 to 2032-33, and refer it to a council workshop and bring it back to the meeting, and I'm not sure which meeting that would be, I need some advice, where we consider the mid-year budget review, if that's the appropriate wording.
So I'll just check with the minute taker.
Thought about it.
While we're waiting for that, Councillor Johnson, I might just ask the CEO to provide some comments around the achievability.
So through the chair, the amendment is that council will note it and that it will come back as part of the mid-term budget review, which will be around December, January of this year. Is that correct, Councillor Johnson?
That's my intention, yes.
Yeah, so through the chair, the intention is, councillors, as you would be aware through the workshops and that, the long-term financial plan that you have in front of you is a start, because there is a big debt in terms of the asset management plans that we currently have on the books at the city. So there is a lot of work that's being undertaken at the moment within that area. We hope to have some drafts to you in the coming months, with the aim of by December this calendar year, the long-term financial plans will be at a point where they will then actively inform the long-term financial plan. So we could work towards that time frame, but it may have to be pushed out another month dependent upon the asset management plans and the process of that. We've got it earmarked in our work schedule to have that completed. So if it's around the December, January time, I'm reasonably confident that we will be able to be in a position to present you something that's got more rigour and detail in it, because we would have built the asset management framework by then.
So Councillor Johnson, I'll just see if what's on the screen, if you can confirm that that's the correct wording.
Wonder if you can also add to bring it back to, I mean, is it necessary to add to bring it back to council at that time when the work is done for it to be a rigorous plan?
I'll go to the CEO.
So through the chair, would it be appropriate to say that it comes back as part of the 23-24 budget review?
Yes, that's my intention.
Yeah.
We'll just get that wording altered.
Thank you.
Okay, so is that correct? Does that make sense? Okay. So do I have a seconder? Councillor Palmer. Councillor Johnson?
Thank you. Sorry, can I just correct the wording? Sorry. Council notes the draft long-term financial plan.
Just wait for the...
My apologies, sorry, just reading that through. Yeah, thank you. Would you like me to speak to that now?
I'll just check now that the wording's been updated. You're still happy with that, Councillor Palmer? Yeah, if you could speak to the amendment.
Yeah, thank you. On relevance, I'll just discuss the amendment. Certainly note that the long-term preparation of the long-term financial review, the long-term financial plan, my apologies, has been something that we've all been trying to work for, to a deadline to achieve that. I just don't think the format that it's been presented to us provides enough detail to give either staff certainty about what activities to pursue and in what priority, nor give the community any real feedback about when things are going to happen. Noting that, the draft is a good mud map, if you like, but certainly you wouldn't want to rely on it to find, to navigate to anywhere. And that's why we need the detail. So I'd rather not endorse it, but just, provide a bit of time for that detailed work to be done. And, noting the intent of it, and then to come back with the details as outlined by the CEO.
Thank you. Councillor Palmer.
Thank you. Just very briefly, something that I did touch on in my previous acknowledgement of the process that we were going through. And I thank Councillor Georgia Johnson for bringing this up. I'm happy to acknowledge that. I feel that with the few large $1 million business expenses that we had last year, and then our new CEO, we threw the book at him and said, here you go, sort it out, please. And he's had to do that for us, and we thank him very much. But none of that was of his doing until he came on board to us. We were very pleased he's here, and he has promised us from day one the long-term financial plan, and we've got confidence in that completely. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone wish to speak on this amendment? Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mayor. I understand what Councillor Johnson's trying to do. The problem, the thing I fear is that it has taken us this long to get to this point, and even though it only looks like 2 pages in our agenda, these 2 pages have been hard fought for, and part of the problem has been the inability of councillors around this table to actually agree on how we should tax and how we should then invest our money, particularly in our assets. I remember years ago, and this was years ago, doing a tour of some of the city's assets, and the difficulty has been, and some of them were, quite literally falling down. They don't have tenants in them because they need repairs, and they're so bad that something drastic needs to happen to them. But there hasn't been the agreement on council to work out what to do here. So it is time for those on council, and I note that many of us have actually all been on council for the same amount of time. So in the discussion, there's all this sense that, oh, this is all new. It's suddenly new in this year or last year. None of this is new. The mayor was the deputy mayor. The deputy mayor was previously on council longer than I've been on council. So we've had these issues. It is time for council to actually sit down and fix them. And to do that, we have to go through the workshops in good faith, not have these surprises thrown at us at the end of the process, and actually work out how are we going to manage these assets and how are we going to manage the city's revenue and the city's expenditure. So that's on us as a council, and I'm calling on councillors to show some leadership here. This is the first draft. We'll keep working on it, but we've got to do better in this space.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I'm probably not going to support this amendment. I think I would have been happier if it was council still endorsed the draft long-term financial plan and still brought it back for further consideration of the budget review. We do need a long-term financial plan. Even if it is just a mud map, we need that mud map. We haven't had a long-term financial plan for a long time, and as I've said many times, when it's done right, it is a living document, and it makes just the whole budget process so much easier because you slice off that 1 year and put it on, and then the budget's done. You know, the way that it is at the moment, it is a lot of work for everyone, and it's this constant finding and picking pieces. You know, when I'm mentioning lots of work, I would like to thank the CEO and the finance staff, and I think particularly Mr. Monks as well, for all the work that has gone into the long-term financial plan. I recognise that that is a significant body of work, so thank you for your time put into that. So I won't be supporting what's currently on the table. I would have been more comfortable if it was endorses it as well as does the review, because ideally, in that living document, it should be reviewed annually anyway. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak to this amendment? Anyone else? Councillor Peterson-Pick.
Yeah, look, I'll be quick without trying to repeat what I said before about this issue. I thank Councillor Eves Johnson, of course, for bringing this, because, yeah, I'm not in a position to endorse what we have on the table. There are no details. It's signing on a blank check, which I never do, even if I used, to use checks. But, yeah, $2.5 million deficit. If council supports this tonight, this is what we go to residents to tell them, look, this is what we supported, millions of deficits without doing any work. So I don't think council should support what we have on the table.
Councillor Ostrowski.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Earhart, for speaking on this. And I would agree with what Councillor Earhart has said, that we do need a long-term financial plan endorsed by council. So I'd like to propose an amendment, if I can, to this, to have council endorses the draft long-term.
We're dealing with an amendment. You can't amend an amendment.
Okay, at least I asked.
Sorry, I'm getting conflicting advice.
Technically you can amend an amendment, but the standing orders talk about dealing with one amendment at a time, but that's usually about different parts of a motion, so technically you can amend an amendment as long as it's not too confusing to the council. You could ask
What's the amendment?
To go with council endorses the draft. So I'm just changing that word from notes to endorser. So perhaps I could ask the mover if she'd be willing to do that, if I'm allowed to, under the standing orders, as opposed to then perhaps foreshadowing the motion should it fail.
Do you accept that amendment?
Sorry, Mayor, can I just raise a point of order? I'm not interrupting, Deputy Mayor. Surely we're too far into debate to amend the amendment. Does everyone then get to re-speak again?
I'll just seek advice from the governance manager.
Through you, Madam Mayor, you said I understand it is confusing. Technically, you can amend an amendment. Generally, councils will have a clause in their standing orders, which we do, which says that you deal with one amendment at a time. But if the amendment is within the matter that you're amending, you can move an amendment within an amendment. So in this case, Councillor Ostrowski has asked to amend one word, which he's now seeking agreement to from the mover and seconder. If the mover and seconder don't agree to accept that amendment to the amendment, it would then be debated as its own amendment. If it failed, if it was carried, it would then be considered as part of we'd just go back to the amendment. We'd be back on those railway tracks. I don't know if you remember Mr. Julian Price giving us a briefing on that. And if it fails, then we just go back to the amendment as it was.
So I'll go back to the mover and seconder. Do you accept the amendment?
No.
No. Do you wish to proceed, or do you wish to foreshadow?
I want to proceed with this, and I'd like to get that endorsed, please.
Yeah. Seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Councillor Sazowski, you're now talking to the amendment.
For the reasons that have already been provided before, we need a long-term financial plan endorsed by this council, and it can come back towards the end of the year to be reconsidered and jigged. So I think we need a long-term financial plan now.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor?
Thanks. I'm not going to reiterate what I've just said 5 minutes ago. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak to Councillor Sazowski's amendment to the amendment? Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mayor. I understand that procedurally we can do this. I've never seen it done in my 6 years on council. It's a bit cute to convert it back to what the original proposal is as well. I understand the sentiment, and obviously I spoke in favour of us getting this long-term financial plan. I fear that we may end up spending more time tonight debating the wording of this than we did actually working out the intricacies of how we tax and how we spend money on this council. That's a bit of a shame, I think, particularly given the cuts that have been proposed in this slash and burn government, slash and burn budget, I should say. So I can't support the amendment to the amendment, and I feel like we're getting a bit Alice in Wonderland here.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak on this? Councillor Bull?
I was happy with the word notes. I think that while we have a draft long-term financial plan before us, it does need more work before it's endorsed by council, for a number of reasons that I probably can't go into here as part of this debate, for want of not being relevant. And so I would urge councillors to not support, endorse, but rather note, so that we do have the opportunity to continue to work on something that actually can be delivered on.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak to this?
Thank you, just if I may.
If not, I'll go to the mover to close.
That's me.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Just in regards to this, there is a process that we can follow, and we have standing orders on how we can engage in a council meeting, and providing an amendment on an amendment is allowed. So we have all of these mechanisms available to us, and tonight I'm using those mechanisms available to me. It's not cutesy that this is all happening. I'm just doing my job. Thank you.
Okay, we'll now put Councillor Ostrzowski's amendment to the vote. All those in favour? That's Councillor Maleka, Councillor Ostrzowski, Councillor Sutherland, the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Eveson and myself. All those against? It's Councillor Palmer, Councillor Peterson-Pick, Councillor Bull, Councillor Clark and Councillor Johnson. That is carried. That is carried. So that forms the amendment now. So now we go back to the amendment. Does anyone else wish to speak on this amendment that hasn't already spoke? Councillor Clark, have you...
Sorry, Mayor, can I just clarify? Is this now... Sorry.
I have a point of order, sorry.
Councillor Clark, sorry,
I
he's
see the point of order.
are you calling
No,
the point of order
order.
on Councillor Clark?
Everything. Sorry, Madam Mayor.
Go ahead.
Sorry,
Sorry, Councillor
sorry,
Clark.
Councillor
Councillor
Clark.
Peterson-Pick has...
Sorry, Councillor Clark. Standing orders, section or clause 10.2, order of amendments. I would like the governance manager to correct me if I'm wrong. Any number of amendments may be proposed to a substantive motion. Amendments here are only to a substantive motion. They cannot be done to amendments. We have never done that. 10.9 order of amendments, and it says, but when an amendment is moved to a substantive motion, no second or subsequent amendment is to be moved or considered until the first amendment has been withdrawn, carried, or lost. The other motion is invalid. We should follow the standing orders.
I'm seeking advice from the governance manager on this.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'm aware of that provision in the standing orders. What the way that I interpret that provision is that when you've moved a substantive motion, for example, you may have a substantive motion that has 4 parts, and you move an amendment to part 2. You could not then move another amendment to part 4 until you had dealt with the amendment to part 2. But if there is an amendment to another amendment that's being considered to part 2, sometimes, with the agreement of the presiding member and the agreement of the meeting, it makes sense to deal with that amendment to the amendment while you're dealing with that part of the motion, because the alternative is that what you could do instead is that you move an amendment. So Councillor Johnson moved an amendment. That amendment is carried or failed, and then another councillor moves another amendment to that same part. The difficulty with that approach is that you're then re-debating the same matter again and again. So look, in answer to your question, both approaches are legitimate. If you go to the Department of Local Government's meeting procedure guidelines, there is actually a specific section in those guidelines that talks about amendments to amendments. They are allowable, it's just sometimes they're not practical or pragmatic, and that's why councils are able to make their own decisions about how they want to manage their meetings, but they are technically allowed.
Thank you. So look, just a follow-up, a point of order. I think this is something for the chair to make a decision on, because it is my view, under our standing orders that we approved, that it is not allowed, and I respect the governance. I don't know the guidelines from the department. This is what we approved, and it says very clearly an amendment can only be done to a substantive motion. So this is a decision for the chair.
Yes, thank you for your comments, Councillor Peterson-Peake. I will be following the advice from the governance manager. So the motion is valid, and it now forms part of the amendment from Councillor Johnson. Councillor Clark, sorry, you were interrupted.
I just had a question. I just want to clarify that the wording, I'm just in terms of version control, the wording here now on the screen, is that what is in the run sheet, the latest version of the run sheet?
No, it's on the screen because it's an amendment, so it's not in the run sheet.
So just to clarify, so what Councillor Ostaszewski did was added endorses back, but then Councillor Johnson's comment about it coming back to the budget review.
Yes, that remains.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay, would anyone else like to speak on what's in front of your screen? What's on the screen? Councillor Bull, Councillor Clark has raised issues of people talking side conversations, so can you please not have any side conversations, councillors? Councillor Johnson? Nobody else wishes to discuss. I'll go to you to close this on this amendment.
Thank you very much for your consideration of that. I have nothing further to add.
Okay, we're now voting on this amendment. All those in favour? That's Councillor Maleka, Councillor Ostaszewski, Councillor Palmer, Councillor Sutherland, Deputy Mayor, Councillor Clark, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Eveson and myself. All those against, Councillor Peterson-Peake and Councillor Bull. The amendment is carried and forms part of the substantive motion. I've lost track on where we are.
So we're back to the
Yeah, thank you.
So, councillors, we're back to the substantive motion. Councillor Johnson, you wish to speak on the substantive motion?
Thank you very much for taking the time to consider the amendment. Yes, thank you. Yes, it go back to the substantive. I won't talk on this too much. Obviously, need to thank Stuart, Alan, Jeremy. Sorry, no titles. Directors, all the managers that have worked really hard to develop a plan-driven budget, as we've heard that we did during our workshops. It is a different approach, and I've appreciated the opportunity to look at that differently. I think, going back to the Paxton reports, they talked about the need for sustainable rate increases. They talked about the need for a long-term financial plan, which we have got in a form which we are now endorsing, or not, that we've got in front of us in some more detail. It talks about a budget which is better aligned with our strategic documents, and I think we're getting closer to that with this budget. I don't think any budget is going to please anyone. We've all voted for and against in our time together, you know, the various budgets that have been brought towards us, and we can pick and choose over, you know, projects that we're super passionate about and ones that we're, you know, leave the passion to other people on. This budget's got a lot in it that's good. It's obviously missing, you know, some things which I would love to have in it, but I'll choose to die in a ditch over those items another time, and I will be supporting the budget that we have in front of us.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. So would anyone else who hasn't already spoken to the substantive motion wish Councillor Eveson? Yep.
Thank you. Look, I just wanted to, I'm a bit disappointed at some of the comments tonight about division. To me, council is doing exactly what it should be, and as outlined in the Local Government Act, appropriately planning for the future whilst we balance and represent the residents and ratepayers of a district, not specific wards. This is clearly acknowledged. There is some differences of opinion, but I think there's a level of professionalism that needs to prevail, especially when you're talking about the budget. So back to the budget. There's a clear acknowledgement tonight that times are tough in our community, and I feel that this is reflected in this budget. It makes some pretty tough calls because it must. This budget is the first phase of repair under our new CEO, and one that pivots the city towards a far more sustainable and brighter future, whilst deeply considering the pressures on households. I say first phase as there has been a significant effort from the city staff facilitating numerous workshops and answering hundreds of questions. This is my second budget, and what an extensive process to date. This year, a new direction led the service planning process, a financial process that maps cost to a far deeper level than council has ever seen before. And that's why I made this statement. This budget makes some tough calls, because we can. Going back to this first phase, this is because there is a vast amount of work already underway for phase two. As mentioned in some of the debate, there's a maturity required in our asset management to better manage the $1 billion of assets that we are responsible for, improve scrutiny and interrogation of the Capital Works program, as was raised by Councillor Peterson-Pick. The Capital Works program is a vital reflection of legacy project planning that didn't consider a more strategic whole of life viewpoint, and it's a critical input into the long-term strategies and plans. I said strategic and longer-term viewpoint, which will enable us to live within our means. And this echoes the almost misplaced first-generation Paxson report. But both Paxson reports combined have clearly defined the path forward to improvement, one that lifts the organisation and provides far better systems, improved governance, and a stable foundation to move forward. Voting against this budget says, no, that's not for us. We're going to ignore expert advice, financial advice. No, we don't want you to address the sizable list of audit and risk actions that are considerably aged.
Object. I'd seek to make a personal explanation.
Is that a point of order?
Yes, it is. Under the standing orders, I seek to make a personal explanation. Councillor Eveson is suggesting that in voting against this budget, I'm not taking expert advice or audit advice. I reject that entirely.
So the point of order is you found the comment offensive?
Yes, highly offensive. But
So
if anyone tonight votes
Councillor
against the budget, somehow they're against audit advice and expert advice.
Councillor Eveson, would you like to retract that offensive comment? Can you retract the offensive comment?
I'd like it retracted and an apology, because this has happened previously from Councillor Eveson. He didn't apologise last time.
I don't believe it's offensive.
Does he have to?
Madam Mayor.
He's saying it's not offensive, so you've got to rule whether it's...
Councillor Eason, I'm ruling that it's offended Councillor Clark, so it is upheld the point of order. Can you please withdraw your comment? Can you please withdraw your comment? Thank you.
I would withdraw my comment.
Councillor Peterson-Pick and Councillor Bull, can we not have side conversations, because that has been raised as an issue? Thank you. Councillor Eason, please. Okay.
Yep, yeah. I'll retract the comment, and I apologise that you're offended, Councillor Clark. I'll be voting for this budget because I will be following expert financial advice. I'll be voting for this budget because I will be looking to address the sizable list of audit risk and risk actions that are considerably aged. And I will be voting for this budget because the ratepayers expect that things are working effectively behind the scenes to deliver the services that they expect and depend upon. So let's get on with the budget. That demonstrates a clear step forward for our residents and ratepayers, the city and the council. on its whole, I feel it's fair and considered budget, and we, as a council, can pick at pieces, get offended to try and discredit it on the whole, but that's not how budget should be considered. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak on this who hasn't already spoken? Councillor Bull.
Firstly, I'd like to sincerely thank the staff for all the work that they've put in. It's always a significant body of work, year in, year out, tireless hours for working for our community, and so I really appreciate the work that they have done very much. Sadly, though, and on the back of last year's budget, this is a budget that continues to levy more and deliver less for our community. And so if any same councillors who supported last year's budget supports what is before us tonight, they would have supported a combined rate revenue rise over those 2 years greater than the previous 4 years combined. In fact, no budget since 2012 that I can tell has raised rates revenue in the percentage magnitude that has occurred last year and is before us this year, 4.95%. But in continuing to hike rates in this potentially unprecedented way, less continues to be delivered. For example, destination marketing strategy implementation remains unfunded. There is less to deliver the implementation of the environment and livability framework. There is less for natural area improvement. There is nothing to implement the citywide streetscape enhancement program. There is nothing for infant immunisation. There is nothing for subsidised podiatry for our older residents. There's less for placemaking, there's nothing for participatory budgeting, and there's no provision for an arts officer. But now I'd like to draw people's attention to the Enterprise Resource Planning Project, or ERP. This budget contemplates raiding the Economic Stimulus Reserve in the order of $1.286 million to pay for that. A reserve for the purpose of funding employment-generating projects for the benefit of the community. This is not an appropriate use of this reserve, in my view. And I'm not sure I can actually say too much more about the ERP because matters pertaining to that were presented to Council and voted on behind closed doors. So all I'll say is that we are being asked to spend over $1 million from an unrelated reserve for a project that the public know little about. Now I have concerns with what has been presented as the 10-year long-term financial plan. It contemplates introduction of differential rates, which I don't support with the information before me. And based on past history, there is a good chance a future council won't support that either, immediately diverting from the 10-year financial plan. And it contemplates rate rises well above assumed CPI, which again, based on past history, is unlikely to be followed by future councils year on year, again diverting from the long-term financial plan. And finally, the plan has no projects, and so I don't understand how it can be determined the amount of funding needed year on year without making decisions on what that funding is to be spent on each year. So for these reasons, I can't support the budget. Levying more for less and combined with last year's rate revenue rise more than the previous 4 years combined, not funding or funding fully important services and strategies that the community want or need, and a long-term financial plan that lacks project detail and which I think future councils are unlikely to adhere to.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Firstly, I do want to thank the CEO and all the staff who have worked hard on the budget preparation and all the documents, so thank you. I was actually going to axe a whole portion of my speech out in relation to long-term financial plan because I do bang on about it every budget speech. So I thought I was going to give you guys a rest, but no. Just in response from Councillor Bull there about deviating from the long-term financial plan. When I was first elected to this council, we had a long-term financial plan. And pardon me, sorry. Council only followed 2 years of that plan. The first year was 4.9%, and each year after was 3.5%. You know, and then that's accumulated with zero rate revenue increases and bringing forward $5.09 million worth of capital works, which unfortunately was not sustainable, and it has had effect on the city, compounding as well with very high inflation, increased costs for labour, materials and contracts, and, you know, building costs, etc. Pardon me. What's really interesting to me, though, is that you know, the rhetoric that this is allegedly a budget of cuts and being less for the community, levying more and delivering less. I kind of feel like maybe I'm reading a different budget to everyone else. When I read this budget, I see $42.5 million under the environment and livability operating expenses. That's half the budget. $21.7 million under the community operating expenses. And I'll break that down further. $3.8 million for our libraries, $1.2 million for Riverside Garden Urban Forest, $1.2 million for a bike path to connect Bayswater to Morley, $6.2 million for underground power, $13.8 million for community amenities, $1.3 million for the low-cost urban safety program, $1.5 million for foreshore and riverbank stabilisation, and I could go on and on. I'm going to save you all, and I'm not. In my view, this budget strikes a responsible balance between protecting our core services and maintaining our ageing assets while being mindful of the financial pressures in our community and keeping rates under CPI. I am confident that this budget, like last year's budget, takes steps towards recovery while being financially responsible and also being responsive to the Paxson report, and that's why I'll be supporting the budget this year. We've spent around 18 hours or so in workshops and presentations, briefings for this budget, and we've had hundreds of questions asked and answered. You know, and I will, you know, make note as well of Councillor Ostaszewski. You didn't like the budget. You put forward a solution. It didn't pass, but you put forward a solution. And I want to acknowledge that, because not everyone may be, you know, may have liked the way it was done, but at least an attempt was made. What I don't like is if people just vote no without solutions, without any reason. And I'd just like to conclude with, if you are thinking of not supporting this budget, particularly if it's over a small thing, I would like to remind you that voting against this budget, you're voting against funding for safe routes to schools, our libraries, our environment and safer roads. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bull, you've got your microphone on.
Let's have a question.
Go ahead.
Yeah. In LIM 12, the long-term financial plan, it says the amended version that you put forward says, noting the following projects will be considered in separate limbs. But when I look at the long-term financial plan, it doesn't list any projects. So I'm just wondering whether actually that wording is needed.
I'm going to the Manager of Governance.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Look, possibly that wording is overcautious, but what we were trying to ensure was that councillors that had declared interests weren't caught in voting on an item that they had an interest in. So the long-term financial plan does include in the figures, though they're not spelt out in the figures, it does include those projects. So that's why they've been split out that way. But it is a very conservative approach to managing those conflicts of interest.
Thanks. May I ask a follow-up question? So up until now, my understanding is that projects haven't been assigned to the long-term financial plan, but it just sounds like that actually there is some assignment of projects. So I'd just like clarity around the confusion that is in my mind as a consequence.
I'll go to the CEO to respond.
Just through the chair, the long-term financial plan is built upon the asset classes through the depreciation, and that's how we built it thus far. So with the inclusion of the footpath renewal program and Maylands underground power, the asset classes will be included in there. And as the Manager of Governance has stated, it's an overcautious approach because of the fact that we've got councillors that do have interests in relation to that. So it could be excluded, but we're taking a cautious approach to make sure that all councillors are covered. Councillor Bull, in regards to that.
Councillor Ostaszewski, I think you wish to speak? No? Okay. So everyone has spoken on the item. So I'll just close. Thank you to everybody for your comments. I believe what we have in front of us tonight is a well-prepared budget that supports our community and is financially responsible, and I would encourage my fellow councillors to support it. So now we're going to have to go limb by limb, which is going to be interesting. So we will start, and I'll ask the minute taker to have them on the screen. Because I need to see the people online as well for voting purposes, so it's a bit hard to expand it. So we'll try and get it as big on the screen as we can. Okay. Okay.
Sorry to interrupt, Mayor. Can I just ask, given this is such a different approach to what we've done in previous years, perhaps the CEO could explain what advice has shifted as to why we're doing it this way? We've never done it since my time on council like this.
No problem. I'm pretty sure that advice was distributed to councillors, but I'll ask the CEO to repeat that.
Sorry, no, it was, Mayor, but just for the public's benefit.
So sorry, Councillor Clark, in relation to splitting out the certain items of footpaths and the underground power. Yep.
Yes,
So through the chair, that's in relation to the fact that certain councillors have an interest, and the advice that we've received from WALGA and the Department of Local Government is that if you have that interest, then you can still adopt the budget, noting that following projects will be separated out. And then when we separate those out, as you can see in limbs 2 and 3 there, then the particular councillors with that interest can then actually leave the chambers for that reason. And I know, councillors, that this is the first time that we've done this. It's the first time in my 30 plus years in local government that this has been, this has occurred. And we are seeking, discussions with WALGA and the department, but they have categorically stated to us that this is the way to do it going forward. But we will take it further with them post the meeting tonight as well, councillors.
Thank you.
Okay, so councillors, we're going to go limb by limb. So I'm going to start with limb 1, as it is in front of you, with the changes indicated in red. So I'll now put this to the vote. All those in favour? Sorry. No, it's okay for this one. I'll let you know when you have to leave the room. It's 1, all of 1.
All of 1.
That's fine. It's fine. I'll advise the councillors when you have to leave the room. Okay? Okay. Councillor Eveson, do you have a question, or are you just keeping your hand up? Okay. Okay. Limb 1. I'll put this to the vote. All those in favour? That is Councillor Maleka, Councillor Ostaszewski, Councillor Sutherland, Deputy Mayor, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Eveson and myself. All those against? Councillor Palmer, Councillor Peterson-Pitt, Councillor Bull and Councillor Clark. Limb 1 is carried. So for limb 2, as Councillor Sutherland has declared a proximity interest in the footpath renewal for Bunya Street, you will now need to leave the chamber. Okay, so limb 2, I now put this to the vote. All those in favour? That's Councillor Maleka, Councillor Ostaszewski, Councillor Palmer, Deputy Mayor, Councillor Peterson-Pitt, Councillor Bull, Councillor Johnson and myself. All those against? Councillor Clark and Councillor Eveson. That is carried. Can we please ask Councillor Sutherland back into the room and Councillor Peterson-Pick if you could please leave due to your financial proximity interest? Councillor Sutherland, just for your information, Lim 2 was adopted. So councillors, we'll now move on to Lim 3. All those in favour? That is Councillor Maleka, Councillor Ostaszewski, Councillor Palmer, Councillor Sutherland, Deputy Mayor, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Eveson and myself. All those against is Councillor Bull and Councillor Clark. That is carried. Can we please ask Councillor Peterson-Pick back? Councillor Peterson-Pick, for your information, Lim 3 was carried. Okay, we'll now move on to Lim 4. Just checking everyone can stay in the room, yes. Okay, Lim 4. All those in favour? That is Councillor Maleka, Councillor Ostaszewski, Councillor Sutherland, Deputy Mayor, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Eveson and myself. All those against? Councillor Palmer, Councillor Peterson-Pick, Councillor Bull and Councillor Clark. That is carried. Lim 5. Put this to the vote. All those in favour? That is Councillor Maleka, Councillor Ostaszewski, Deputy Mayor, Councillor Peterson-Pick, Councillor Sutherland, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Eveson and myself. All those against? Councillor Clark, Councillor Palmer and Councillor Bull. That is carried. Lim 6. Put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is Councillor Maleka, Councillor Ostaszewski, Councillor Palmer, Councillor Sutherland, Deputy Mayor, Councillor Peterson-Pick, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Eveson and myself. All those against is Councillor Clark and Councillor Bull. That is carried. Lim 7. Put that to the... Oh, sorry, I'll just wait for it to get on the screen. Okay, Lim 7. I'll put this to the vote. All those in favour? That is Councillor Maleka, Councillor Ostaszewski, Councillor Palmer, Deputy Mayor, Councillor Peterson-Pick, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Eveson and myself. All those against? Councillor Sutherland, Councillor Clark and Councillor Bull. That is carried. Lim 8. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is Councillor Maleka, Councillor Maleka, Councillor Ostaszewski, Councillor Sutherland, do you have your hand up or not? Yes? No? Councillor Sutherland, Deputy Mayor, Councillor Peterson-Pick, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Eveson and myself. All those against? Councillor Clark, Councillor Bull, Councillor Palmer, how are you voting? Against? So Councillor Clark, Councillor Palmer, Councillor Bull against. That is carried. Lim 9. Put this to the vote. All those in favour? That is unanimous. Lim 10. I'll put this to the vote. All those in favour? That is Councillor Maleka, Councillor Ostaszewski, Councillor Palmer, Councillor Sutherland, Deputy Mayor, Councillor Peterson-Pick, Councillor Eveson, Councillor Johnson and myself. All those against? Councillor Clark and Councillor Bull. Lim 11. I'll put this to the vote. All those in favour? That is Councillor Maleka, Councillor Ostaszewski, Councillor Palmer, Councillor Sutherland, Deputy Mayor, Councillor Peterson-Pick, Councillor Bull, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Eveson and myself. All those against is Councillor Clark. That is carried. Okay, Lim 12 as amended. I'll put this to the vote. All those in favour? That is Councillor Maleka, Councillor Osazowski, Councillor Palmer, Councillor Sutherland, Deputy Mayor, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Clark, Councillor Eveson and myself. All those against? Councillor Peterson-Pick and Councillor Bull. That is carried. As Councillor Sutherland has declared a proximity interest in the footpath renewal for Bunya Street, you will now need to leave the chamber for the next limb. Limb 13. I'll put this to the vote. All those in favour? That is Councillor Maleka, Councillor Osazowski, Councillor Palmer, Deputy Mayor, Councillor Peterson-Pick, Councillor Bull, Councillor Johnson and myself. All those against? Councillor Eveson and Councillor Clark. Councillor Clark, how are you voting on this?
Sorry, Mayor, I was just trying to find it. I'll actually vote for that.
You're voting for? Okay, I'll just
Sorry, I was trying to work out the amendment.
I'll just retake the vote then, just to be clear for the minute taker.
My apologies.
Limb 13. All those in favour? That is Councillor Maleka, Councillor Osazowski, Councillor Palmer, Deputy Mayor, Councillor Peterson-Pick, Councillor Bull, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Clark and myself. All those against? Councillor Eveson. That is carried. Can we please get Councillor Sutherland back in, and Councillor Eveson, you are leaving the room? Oh. Councillor Peterson-Pick. Is that the second time? Anyway. Councillor Sutherland, for your information, Limb 13 was adopted. Okay, so we're on to Limb 14. I'll put this to the vote. All those in favour? That is Councillor Maleka, Councillor Osazowski, Councillor Palmer, Councillor Sutherland, Deputy Mayor, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Clark, Councillor Eveson and myself. All those against is Councillor Bull. Can we please ask Councillor Peterson-Pick to rejoin? Councillor Peterson-Pick, for your information, that limb was adopted. Okay, that is all of item 9.1. So we now move on to item 9.2, which is the Corporate Business Plan 2023 to 2023-24 to 2026-27. Councillors, I'll be moving the officer's recommendation with the amendments as shown in red on your run sheet. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Osazowski. Thank you. Okay, so councillors, the Corporate Business Plan outlines how the city plans to deliver on the objective and strategies set out in the city's key guiding document, the Strategic Community Plan. This year, the council implemented a new council-led process with early input from councillors on the needs and priorities of the community at the commencement of business planning. A series of 6 workshops have been held with council over the last 8 months to develop the corporate business plan alongside the annual budget. The corporate business plan has been developed based on detailed service plans and project plans that have been fully costed and align with the annual budget. These plans give council the confidence that the decisions they make reflect community priorities and needs, and that the services we offer are value for money. Through this process, the council has shown its commitment to implementing integrated planning and reporting, which is integral to the city's long-term financial sustainability. I encourage all councillors to show their support for this new process and adopt the corporate business plan. Councillor Osazowski, would you like to add anything? No? Would anyone like to speak on this? Councillor Bull.
I won't be supporting this. The corporate business plan, unfortunately, doesn't seem to provide a 4-year plan of actions, which it should. Rather, it confirms 1 year of actions and then which of those will continue in the subsequent 3 years and which of those 3 years. So I'm unsure what the purpose of this corporate plan really serves, other than confirming which actions are being funded in this year's budget, and then of those which might be funded in future years. a 4-year corporate plan that only details 1 year and those years that will take subsequent years to complete, I don't think is something I can support.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak on this? Councillor Peterson-Peake.
Thank you. Look, I fully support the process. I think it's obviously beneficial. I do have some concerns with some elements in the plan, and I do thank the officers for, I think, during the process fixing some things. One concern, for example, there is no commitment to continue with the emissions reduction and renewable program beyond the next financial year, and this is a big concern. The Maylands Lakes project beyond, again, there is no commitment for the Maylands Lakes project rehabilitation project beyond the next financial year, which obviously we will require more attention and funding. So those are just 2 examples, but there are more.
Anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Johnson.
Sorry, so I just have a question, please.
Go ahead.
Sorry. So touching on what Councillor Peterson-Peake just said, so if I'm looking at page, say for example, 24 of 43 in the corporate business plan, in my version, under LIM 18, environment and sustainability, where there's no green tick after an item, does that say that item will not continue into future years?
Sorry, I didn't hear the question. Do you mind repeating that?
Of course. So under the details, where it says projects and programs, and then, so this could be relevant for any of the, I don't know what you call them, any limbs or any groupings of it. So under the column that says 23-24, and it's got a dollar sign next to it, we've got numbers, but under 24-25 and 25-26 and 26-27, we've either got a blank or a tick. Yes. A tick, I assume, means that program will continue. If there's no tick, does that mean there's an intention for that program to not continue?
I'll just go to the CEO.
Yeah, through you, Chair. It doesn't indicate that there's no intention for that program to continue. It just means that we haven't had that discussion with Council in relation to the allocation of budget towards that in future years. In building this, councillors, there's been an absence of data to actually inform the plan, and as per the comments that I mentioned previously, we're building these processes. So some of it is recurring operating, and that's what the tick will be, in particular that one if you look at plants to residents. So that will recur over the 4 years. But we need to build the processes and have discussions with council around, if we look at the drainage for livability, detailed design, Rudlock Reserve, if a project like that is going to continue over the future years. And that's what we'll go through as we build the business planning process with you again for this financial year.
Okay, thank you. So on that basis, I'll just make the comment that when we've got strategies and plans that go forward, that, for example, the 10-year plan for our foreshore inspections and priorities, that I would expect then that those projects would continue, not just happen for 1 year.
Oh, sorry, I'll just ask the CEO to respond.
Yeah, that's correct, councillor. And as you do the business planning process, then we'll assess that. Well, you will assess that as a council in terms with all your other priorities that you've got. So if you want to make commitments for that over a longer period of time, then we'll pick that up and include that within the service plans that will then be your corporate business plan going forward.
Okay. Yeah, on that basis, I will support that. It's a new format and a comprehensive plan for this new plan. So I hope that we can build on it.
Councillor Peterson-Peake and Councillor Bull. I know, it's just... Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Well, let's not have the side conversations. Anyone else wish to speak to this? If not, I'll put this straight to the vote. All those in favour? That is Councillor Maleka, Councillor Ossowski, Councillor Palmer, Councillor Sutherland, Deputy Mayor, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Eveson and myself. All those against? Councillor Peterson-Peake, Councillor Bull and Councillor Clark. That is carried. So we'll now go to LIM 2. which is Councillor Sutherland. You have a proximity interest. So we'll now vote on this. Lim 2, all those in favour? That is Councillor Ostrowski, Councillor Palmer, Councillor Peterson-Pick, Councillor Johnson and myself. All those against? Is Councillor Maleka, Deputy Mayor, Councillor Bull, Councillor Eveson and Councillor Clark. Yes. So that one's lost because it requires an absolute majority. So that's lost.
It's in the budget. Through the chair, just for council, that was endorsed as part of the budget, and then for your corporate business plan, you have now not endorsed it. So,
What does it mean?
it means you have it in your budget, but you don't have it in your corporate business plan.
Can we please ask Councillor Sutherland to come back into the room? Are you allowed to? Are you allowed to comment?
No, probably not. Maybe at the end of the meeting.
Okay. Councillor Sutherland, for your information, that was lost, Lim 2. And I'll just note for the public that Councillor Peterson-Pick has left the room for this next lim, which is Lim 3, which I'll now put to the vote. All those in favour? That is Councillor Maleka, Councillor Ostrowski, Councillor Palmer, Councillor Sutherland, Deputy Mayor, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Eveson and myself. All those against? Councillor Bull and Councillor Clark. That is carried. Can we please get Councillor Peterson-Pick back in the room? I'll now put Lim 4 to the vote. All those in favour? That is Councillor Maleka, Councillor Ostrowski, Councillor Sutherland, Deputy Mayor, Councillor Peterson-Pick, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Eveson and myself. All those against? Councillor Palmer, Councillor Clark and Councillor Bull. That is carried. So we now move on to item 10, which is there are no notices of motion on tonight's agenda. Item 11, questions from members without notice. Are there any questions from members? No. Item 12, new business of an urgent nature, of which there are none.
Sorry, Mayor, I did have a question. Sorry, Mayor, can you hear me?
Councillor Clark, I've already moved on. So we're on to item 12 now.
But I had my hand.
Councillor Clark, I've moved on. Item 12, new business of an urgent nature, of which there is none. And item 13. We have no confidential items. So we'll now move on to...
Sorry, I said she's trying to vote. She's trying to change a baby and also... She has to try to change a baby.
So we'll now move on to... I can't...
Can we rescind that and vote
No,
vote that point?
we're
back
on
in
to
again?
item 14, which is closure of meeting. And as we have no new business of an urgent nature or confidential items to discuss tonight, I will close this meeting at 9:17 p.m. Thank you, councillors.
Vote because of how you chaired it? Mayor, did I just miss a vote because of how you chaired this meeting? What can you?
No, you
describe-
can't. Thank you, Councillor Clark.
I think I owed some sort of explanation. I'm trying to do two things at once here.